Marucci is playing Mud, and his list looks very much like the one that Ali Antrazi posted on our own site, StarCityGames.com, just this week.
Yeah, his re-debut to writing. He is back, penning articles.
And one of the unique things he has access to is, in fact, Blood Moon in the main deck. That's excellent against goblins, right?
Yeah, it's really just going to be a beating as Jem's going to play a Scalding Turn, search out a Snow-Covered Mountain. It'll turn the Snow-Covered Mountain into a mountain, is what will happen with Blood Moon. And here is a Goblin Lackey, which is going to resolve. See, there's a little happiness in my voice here as Marucci's going to draw his card. He's playing Mud, the Metal Worker deck, all the artifacts, Kodotha Forge Master, pumping out some gigantic things. The problem for him is that Goblin's actually a pretty tough matchup for him. Those Soul Ring lands can be taken care of by Rishadan Port and Wasteland. Goblin Lackey forces the issue pretty quickly. You're going to see Wasteland and a Lotus Petal here. What are we ramping into?
I assume a Monolith. Yeah, I was about to say, there aren't a lot of 2-drops I would want to crack a Petal for here, and Monolith into Metal Worker is a pretty strong open.
Alright.
Joe is down a number of cards, however, of course, making the Metal Worker a little weaker, but he's obviously, planning to just jam a Wormcoil Engine here and get down to business, probably.
Things could get ugly for that Metalworker, though, because Davis has not one, but 2 copies of 10th Street Hooligan in his deck. He's been a big fan of 10th Street from the start, and we'll see if he does have that and the necessary green mana to be able to enhance it and take care of the Metalworker.
Yeah, 1-2s have been giving Goblin Lackey a fair bit of trouble in Legacy recently. Death Threat Shaman, obviously, the primary culprit, but Metalworker, also a 1-2, perfectly suited to handling.
Are you trying to rile me up? Is that what you're trying to do right now?
I think Metalworker is trying to rile you up.
It's kind of working. The Lackey can't get through. I see where this is going. Yeah, this is the block and plus Gem Palm Incinerator to get it off the table.
I'm actually kind of surprised by the block, to be honest. I feel like the Metalworker is just better than the Goblin, right?
That is risky to let Goblin Lackey through, I'll be honest.
What's he going to do? What's the worst he can do?
Yeah, that's often what people say right before they concede the game. That's a common thing that does happen. So Lackey and Incinerator are going to have to trade with the Metalworker. Thankfully, Incinerator is cycling, so you're actually going to get a card back. So it's kind of like a 1-for-1.
I was setting you up that you're supposed to reply with, the worst thing you do is put a Goblin into play and still kill your Metalworker.
That could be a thing. That could be a thing as well. That does happen.
That's the actual worst he can do.
And cycle and shoot. As here is the Cavernous Souls. There's a top, and for Davis, this is exactly how you want the game to go because it's slowing down drastically now.
We'll get what that Cavern is on. I imagine it's on. No, Golem. Yeah,
what were you imagining?
Well, I mean, I figured Goblin because he needs a red source to be able to play his own Goblin Welder.
Well, he does have those, yeah.
Every other card can just naturally be played with colorless mana. So that was my guess, but I was off. Perhaps Artificer. I'm not sure if that's the class of Goblin Welder. It should be, though. It should be.
It actually should be. I think that's before.
Or Mechanic. I'd be okay with Mechanic.
All of these things.
Class.
That's actually be okay too. Well, we see both players with some hand motions here, making sure that everything is in order from a game state perspective. It looks like maybe
looks
from
like we're
number
verifying
of
hand
cards.
size.
Yeah. What it feels like to me. Not sure if maybe Joe had drawn an extra card on accident here. It looks to be what's in question here. Not quite sure. You see Jim there. It looks like he's speaking with the judge, figuring out how many cards he should have because Joe is not. He hasn't brainstormed or anything.
It looks like Joe has 9 cards, unless I miscounted, which is what he should have on the draw with 7 cards, right?
I believe that's the case.
Yeah, Petal, Metalworker, top, Monolith, land, 3 in hand.
Yeah, so he should be good to go.
Unless he had mulliganed, which is something we didn't perceive there.
Yeah. You see Davis's hand right now with a Wasteland. Also has a Goblin Matron in his hand as well. It looks like he's pretty spell heavy at this point.
Isn't that a little bit where you want to be?
Well, yeah, actually, this is a deck where, it's when I play Goblins, I play 24 lands because you are a very mana-intensive deck. You've got 4 and 5 mana spells, so at least having land number 3 is certainly a start. But you'd like to get to 5 lands a lot of the time so that you can do some porting. You can feel free to Wasteland, so you actually are losing a land, but you'd like to draw a few more. Kind of want to stop at 6. In most games, but I'm very comfortable having that amount of lands in play, and I like to keep pretty land-heavy hands when I play it.
That makes sense. You can obviously see here, if Jim Davis were to Wasteland Joe, he would actually be strapping his own hand pretty significantly, and considering that Joe has a top in play, it's not going to be difficult to figure out what to do. It looks like Jim was consulting on some creature types. There was not a debate over any number of cards in play.
So Matron is going to search for a card here. Jim's going to have to put that face up, actually.
At some point,
You have to reveal the card you search for a Goblin Matron, otherwise everyone would play it. And it is a Goblin War Chief, the hasty little goblin.
Yeah, well, that's going to function as a mana source to cheapen up his hand, let him get those ringleaders sliding into play.
That's the goal.
Look at this. He sees all the angles.
Yeah. Fortunately, he has the stones to play them. That's good. What we were checking in on again was the creature types on Cavern of Souls. Lodestone Golem is a golem, of course, as is Kadoltha Forge Master. Or excuse me, Forge Master and Metalworker are constructs.
Yeah, they are not golems.
They're not golems. You see just a lonely 1/1 Goblin Matron out there. Top in play from Marucci. He needs some help now, though, because it looks like he has some mana issues. He's got the big spells in his hand, but no way to get him in play.
I think I see a Worm Coil and a Chalice, but the Chalice obviously not at its best against Goblins. In fact, it would turn off more of Joe's deck than Jim's.
Yeah, really. That is most likely true. As you see, Davis is going to draw a Scalding Tarn for the turn. We know he has the War Chief as well, but now he can actually start casting these big spells.
So I imagine, now that you see what you're up against, you probably fetch the Tiger, right?
I mean, there is a Wasteland in play for Marucci, but if he Wastelands the Tiger, you're pretty happy about that.
Yeah, I think that's a totally fine trade for us. I suppose if you're particularly intent, you can wait, but I don't know.
Davis could just go Wastelanding here on his own, just taking care of that Wasteland.
That's true, too.
Yeah.
He could just Wasteland the Wasteland. He does not have a non-basic for Joe to fire back on, and then he just goes back to his original plan. Play Goblin, War Chief, attack, play a Ringleader next turn. It's a totally fine line. Makes a lot of sense, actually.
So let's see exactly what he was going to do. He's going to start by fetching.
Well, I guess that means we're not going to be wasting. That seems to imply, okay, he's going to go for a mountain. Not going to present his Taiga just yet. And he'll be casting, I assume, Goblin Ringleader, given the need for the 4th land there.
Yeah, he's got a couple of options, as you did mention, because he could play War Chief. Looks like he's going to play War Chief and then Wasteland him.
Okay.
If that was the case, I kind of like the line that you were basically suggesting, which is you Wasteland the Wasteland, and then you actually search for the Taiga.
Taiga, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that line. Although, to be fair, if you put a War Chief into play, you can no longer Tin Street Hooligan with Tiger, right?
This is true, yes.
Yeah, so that's also a concern. And he does waste after Joe tops. He can obviously top again, but he already topped, so I don't imagine he's
spin it all day.
Change it. Yeah. Knowing how to Wasteland or port against top is actually a fine art.
Yes, it is.
For those who have never had the pleasure of figuring it out. Basically, if your opponent has used a top and not yet drawn a card, that's the time.
Yeah. Picking and choosing and bobbing and weaving and stuff like that. It's interesting because top isn't as prevalent now as it has been in the past in Legacy, because counterbalance decks and with Sensei's Divine Top haven't really been that much of a thing recently because of Abrupt Decay and Jund decks and Bug decks like Shardless Bugs. So we don't really see the Miracles decks anymore. I think when we go to the West Coast, I think Joe the Set will have something to say about that.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah. But for right now, we've seen a lot of people stray away from Sensei's Divine Top decks.
Joe hits another land, a City of Traders. Might give him a little bit of hope. Now he can, perhaps find another land to be able to untap his Grim Monolith, which will actually net him a mana even though he loses the City of Traders. Or he might just be able to actually cast a spell, which would be a unique change of pace for his past couple turns.
So 2 mana here, so there is that top again.
Yeah.
You see Marucci going through his hand a little bit here. He's got that Chalice of the Void, but as you mentioned, not the best time to go about casting that. Does have a mana floating.
He has a Lightning Greaves in his hand as well. He could go ahead and deploy that, or he could just use his top.
Yeah, that's what he's going to do. See a Blood Moon there among the cards.
Perfect.
Yeah. Gotta pass the turn back. So Davis, under no duress here, as he was able to just take care of the Metalworker, and it does beg the question, not if he was supposed to let the Lackey through, but Davis did have the Incinerator, was going to be able to put a Goblin in play, so it was a damned if you do, damned if you don't situation for Marucci earlier.
I think it was more of a damned if you do, really damned if you don't.
Sure. Yeah, hard to argue otherwise. Here's a Skirt Prospector. There's a Mogwar Marshal.
So
Goblin going to come into play. I wonder if it's me. No! I can't.
Not you at all. I don't even know what that is.
I don't get any camera time
That's
ever.
a Mega Man card, isn't it? Well, I mean, that's like a little you, right?
I love Mega Man. What's it going to take? Oh, yeah. Yeah, get that thing out of here.
Jim consenting to the official token.
Hold on.
Sounds
no
like.
way. I had nothing to do with this. I swear, I had nothing to do with this, Jim.
It's definitely not expressly in Cedric's contract.
It's not me. It's not. I'm just here commentating on the match. He could have chosen Eric Smith.
Line 5, paragraph 4.
Look, I got a really good lawyer. Right? I'm a really, really good lawyer. It's not my fault. So you see, Jim is going to. He might do some sacrificing here with the Muggle War Marshal, because with Prospector and War Marshal, you're actually able to generate some mana. So you see him doing some math here.
Yeah, could deploy a ringleader by throwing away a couple goblins. You'd have to throw a War Marshal, its token, and one more guy away, thanks to the cost reduction on Goblin War Chief. But that's a little aggro. I don't know. Yeah,
I don't know if that's necessary. I mean, the War Chief's going to it's going to cost. Excuse me, the ringleader's going to cost 3 mana. So what he's going to do is he can sacrifice the token. Okay, so he's got 4 mana. So now he's just going to ramp up into Siege Gang, which is actually pretty good. So now 3 more goblins are going to come into play, and now he's going to get in the red zone with everybody.
That's a lot.
That's a lot of creatures, yeah. Siege Gang. So we're going to 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 damage. You're going to put Marucci down to 8. So 2-turn clock. And yeah, I think you see Jim doing the math on if he can sacrifice some goblins with the Prospector and shoot him with the Siege Gang, but it's not going to be enough this turn. So Marucci is facing lethal next turn.
It's an intimidating board. Only took him, what, like 7 turns? I don't know.
That's how we like it. It's a slow grind. It's the slow knife, Glenn, that cuts the deepest.
That's what I hear. Wait, wasn't that what the bad guy said and then their knife failed? I feel like that's
actually just it's the only bad part from The Dark Knight Returns, unfortunately. But it's okay, it's a quotable quote. So we see Marucci is going to concede the game. So Jim Davis with Goblins is going to be up a game against Mud. Marucci's Metalworker deck could not generate a huge advantage to get those Wormcoil engines out there, but maybe he can do it in game 2. Maybe he has some things that he can use to slow down Jim Davis a little bit. What's he got, man?
I'm sorry, I was still shocked over you implying Marion Cotillard had bad scenes in The Dark Knight Rises.
Truth hurts. Truth hurts.
Moving over to the sideboard, he has access to a variety of cards that don't usually see play in Legacy because of the nature of the Mud deck. Things like 2 Bottled Cloister. He has a Spine of Ishsaw, a duplicate to Platinum Empyrean, a Steel Hellkite, Mindslaver, Chalice of the Void, Crucible of Worlds, as well as 3 Ensnaring Bridge and 3 Trinisphere. Those are a little more common. He's probably going to be looking to bring in, I imagine, the bridges, or a reasonable form of defense, although as you saw in that game, the fact that he got mana strapped actually meant an Ensnaring Bridge would have been horrible. It wouldn't have stopped anything. And Goblins has a lot of 1/1, so you can definitely get through an Ensnaring Bridge unless the opponent's already firing on their mana. So that kind of does open him up to being weakened in a very similar way. He has, Platinum Empyrean, that can obviously be destroyed by Tin Street Hooligan. And he has, I think Steel Hellkite is probably a reasonable guy. It's going to get you farther than Wormcoil Engine in a lot of situations. Skirk Prospector, obviously an excellent weapon against Wormcoil Engine to prevent the lifelink from doing anything while you build a long game plan. Steel Hellkite gets that right out of there. Goes over the top, kills all the tokens you've got, can kill some other goblins depending on how much mana you want to pump into it. So I think Steel Hellkite's probably the one card I definitely want to bring in. Everything else, I don't know. I feel like it's you have these blood moons. You obviously have to take them out. So there's got to be something.
Are you sure? Are you sure those have to come out?
You got to take them out for something. So I think probably the one Steel Hellkite, maybe the Crucible of Worlds to help you fight against Wasteland. That's not the craziest.
Sure.
That card's actually a fine card. And then beyond that, I don't know. I would probably just play one of the other cards. Maybe a Bottled Cloister. If we're gonna try and run good, might as well.
Try to run the best.
Yeah.
If you can. Davis looking at his sideboard. He's got 3 Pyrokinesis, 3 Red Elemental Blast, 3 Thalia Guardian of Thraben, 3 Mindbreak Trap, and 3 Relic of Progenitus.
So he's prepared for this matchup.
Interesting. That's one way to look at it. Actually, the only card I really like in the sideboard for this matchup is Pyrokinesis. The fact that it can take down a Metalworker, you can just have some added help against that, or a Lodestone Golem. Obviously, if we get to the big mana spells in the deck, I think we're going to be in trouble regardless. Forge Master having 5 toughness. Sundering Titan fits still in, having a big butt, same with Wormcoil Engine and Mere Battlesphere, but it's going to be able to help you against those early things in the game that you can actually take care of with Pyrokinesis.
Yeah, Thalia is very tempting when you're playing against a deck like this. There's pseudo ritual, but it's pretty hit or miss. If he opens up on Soul Land into Metalworker, then what'd your Thalia really do? Metalworker's just gonna cast all the spells. You have a 2/1 First Striker.
Additionally, not very good on the draw either. I could see an argument for it on the play if you're trying to get a little bit lucky and kind of dagger him that way, but on the draw, I don't think so.
And based on what we saw, really, it seems like he needs to just shut down some of Joe's more explosive starts. If the game goes long, the Goblins deck can actually generate a board just as imposing as the Mud decks. You know, he can answer Worm Coil Engine, as we've said. He can token up against mere Battle Spheres. Sunring Titan is really not that intimidating.
Not at all.
There are no Blightsteel Colossus to be found, so he's actually not really that scared of the worst Joe can do. And that's a horrible place to be in a matchup, obviously.
I agree.
When your opponent is just not scared of anything you're doing.
Yeah. What's the biggest thing you put into play? Okay. That's fine.
You just want to start with it, or you want to play the game?
I can beat that. I promise. Yeah, it's always been traditionally a pretty difficult matchup for Mud. You know, even if they start with a Chalice on 1, for example, which their deck is very capable of doing, you can play a Cavernous Souls you can play a Goblin Lackey through Cavernous Souls and invalidate that as well. So Goblins does a really, really nice job of kind of like, you know, bobbing and weaving around the things that that the Mud deck is trying to accomplish. It's pretty interesting and unique.
I think that's an excellent description of just how Goblins generally functions. It's very much, you know, kind of just, I got a little bit of this, I got some War Marshal, you know, I can block your Tarmogoyf a little bit. Maybe this Goblin Lackey gets through. There's a Deathred Shaman.
We work really hard for our wins.
Yes, you do.
I'm not quite sure if it's worth it, but we work really hard for our wins.
There's a cost to playing with Goblins, and that is it.
Yeah, you have to grind them down. There are no easy victories with the Goblins. I'm not sure why I love it so much, but I do.
I like a good grind too, man. You know, I can respect enjoying it.
I think it's the fact that the deck is actually just a deck that's good against Shape the Mind Sculptor that really draws me to it.
Sure.
So that's just one of the best cards. As Davis and Marucci are going to keep their hands, so here is the Goblin Welder. One of my favorite cards of all time, which I feel is just horribly underplayed.
Not by me. I play it in Cube all the time.
Touché.
Goblin Welder with an artifact land to start, worth noting. Joe has, you know, immediate access to being able to replace an artifact should he play one that gets destroyed quickly by Jim. Say he goes into turn 2 Metalworker. Goblin Welder's just going to ensure that guy sticks around.
You see a Arid Mesa going to search out a snow-covered mountain there for Davis. Looks like he does have another turn 1 Goblin Lackey hand. Also caught a Pyrokinesis over there as well. So if Marucci decides to deploy a Metalworker here, it could be Blowout City.
That would be sad for Joe.
So let's see what Marucci's going to do on turn 2.
I think I see an Ancient Tomb, two Ancient Tombs, and a Great Furnace. What else we got? Cold Oath of Forge Masters up in there?
I think I see a Blood Moon.
That's bold.
Yikes.
Maybe Joe came to the same conclusion as us that most of these cards are bad and he'd rather just turn off Rishadenport than sideboard in something that's going to be pretty mediocre.
I see him playing an Ancient Tomb and just passing the turn back here. So Jim is going to untap, take a draw step. He finds an Aether Vial.
Right on time.
Absolutely. Not always there when you call, but always on time.
Jim also has access to a Wasteland, so this is going to be a pretty good turn for him, I imagine. He can attack and see what Joe wants to do. I'm not averse to it. Or he can just like waste Vial and continue to sit back.
I like just he's going to cast Vial. I like casting Pyrokinesis here too.
You like just getting him?
Yeah, I mean I think he might have a Ringleader or something. He's just going to pass the turn back though. Maybe he's not in a big rush.
Yeah, if he had a Ringleader, I think the Pyrokinesis becomes much more defensible. If he doesn't, then it's obviously a little more suspect.
So you see Joe drawing his card for the turn, his Ancient Tomb taken care of by Davis's Wasteland. Just got a little Welder, but nothing really going with it just yet. There's a Great Furnace.
Yeah, Joe not willing to expose his second Soul Land to another Wasteland or Rishadenport. Knows he's going to need it to jump the curve at a later point.
Davis going to take his Vial up to 1, draws Rishadenport for the turn.
Jim's not really doing much, but he's actually creating pressure through the Aether Vial. Even if he just, you know, continues to disrupt the mana with Rishadenport and sit back, the Aether Vial is itself creating pressure, much like a control deck does by making land drops. You know, like every time a Sphinx's Revelation deck plays another land, like that's a form of pressure. They're just moving towards an endgame. Aether Vial, it's the exact same thing.
Yeah, the longer you go, the happier you are, especially when you're playing Goblins. As that Vial starts to tick up, you start to generate a huge advantage. You said pressure is a good way to look at it. It's just a unique way of doing it. A lot of people think of pressure as, I'm being beaten down by Curdius and Wild Nicoddles. There are different forms of pressure depending on the deck that you're playing against. This is how Goblins, again, kind of does it. It's just unique in the way that it accomplishes the things that it does. So you see Davis is going to kind of take his time here. He's not sure if he's going to play a port. He's got a War Marshal in his hand, but he also has Pyrokinesis. He's trying to figure if he should pull the trigger on the Pyrokinesis or not.
Yeah, he appears tempted now that Joe's not really doing anything to just go for it. Obviously, if he'd set up the lackey with the matron, I believe he has in his hand last turn, he could have searched up a ringleader, and then this turn he could be swinging and putting a ringleader into play. Maybe he's thinking, maybe I can just rectify that passivity from the previous turn and go for that exact same sequence now.
This looks like what he's going to do. He's definitely gun shy on it, though. His hand right now is double Pyrokinesis. I believe his hand is double Pyrokinesis, Maug War Marshal, Goblin Matron, and then those lands, Rashad and Port and Taiga. And so you can see he's a little bit gun shy and wanting to do this to clear the path, because he'd like to use it as a 2-for-1, but he's just going to use it as a 1-for-1 to clear the way for the lackey.
Well, it actually is a 2-for-1, but the wrong way.
Oh, sure.
Yep.
Oh, numbers.
He will gain a significant amount of tempo through the Goblin Lackey slipping in a matron, and he'll also have a port to lock down Joe's land. He already knows Joe can't play a spell with 2 mana because he just didn't.
Yep.
So unless Joe has a soul land, the port will lock Joe out of, theoretically, his next turn as well. And even if he does have a soul land, what's the worst thing that could happen?
So Matron's going to come into play, Trigger is going to resolve, and Davis is going to search for a Goblin card. The question is, which Goblin card is he going to search for? Is he going to go Ring Leading? Is he going to look for Siege Gang Commander? Is it time to maybe look for a Tin Street Hooligan? Maybe even a Goblin War Chief? That's the question. Typically Ring Leader.
Yeah, it looks like he's going to Ring Lead, and that also plays in with the Pyrokinesis he has. If a Metalworker lands on the next turn through a soul land, he'd want to be able to handle that.
Yeah. So there is the Goblin Ringleader to Davis's grip. And passing the turn back. Port on the upkeep. Gotta take care of the Great Furnace.
Yeah.
My favorite land of all time.
Great Furnace is your favorite
land? No, close. Very close.
Yeah, Rashadan Port is a heck of a land. It's actually like playing with it in Cube. I seem to say it a lot with all these cards. But Rashadan Port in Cube will teach you some fine lessons about how to evaluate mana.
There is a Blood Moon. Davis is going to look at his hand and say, that is fine.
Well, it turns off his Taiga.
That's true. So it's going to turn off Tin.
Yeah,
it's going to turn off Tin Street.
Your favorite land, gone forever.
Rude. Don't find that to be necessary. It's too bad. My favorite creature, one of them, still alive. Goblin Lackey.
Yeah, he's still out there. He's still rolling.
Davis going to draw a card. It's a Plateau. It's a mountain, actually.
Yep. 2 white bordered mountains in Jim Davis' hand, alongside a Goblin Ringleader and a Pyrokinesis.
Yep, it's about that time. Red zone. In comes the Lackey. In comes the Matron. Marucci down to 15. Trigger. How about another Trigger? And a 1, a 2, a 3, and a 4. 2 Maug War Marshals and a Ringleader. Cabinet Soul is going to go to the bottom of the deck. Must be nice to hit with the Ringleader. Last 2 times I've done it, I went 0 for 4.
I recall seeing some of those times. I believe you were broadcasting them publicly on the internet.
Yep. A touch frustrating.
Oh, you didn't let it show much.
I never do. Here is a Maug War Marshal. Trigger is going to occur. 1/1 Goblin going to come into play. Hello, everybody. I'm on the battlefield.
Oh, that's a Cedric Phillips token. I see.
We need to get you a token. What would you be? What can we get you?
I don't know what I would be. I don't know.
We need you out there on the field of battle more often, Glenn, I think. As Davis is going to pass the turn back over here to Marucci. Marucci has some serious catching up to do. There's a buried ruin. I believe it's buried ruin.
Yeah, it's a buried ruin. Actually, it's a mountain.
Yeah. So it's been a long time since I've been buried ruin. There's a Lotus Petal now. So we got 5 mana. What are we working our way up to? It's Godot the Forge Master. And we're going to take a look at that. And we're going to do it with Jim. We'll bring it up on the screen for you guys because this is basically like a walking tinker. What's the best way to describe this?
I think that's a good job. It is a walking tinker. You sacrifice 3 artifacts. You can sack the Forge Master, but you don't have to. Yeah. And you search your deck for any artifact card and just put it onto the battlefield. Note that the Blood Moon may make the Great Furnaces mountains, but they're still artifacts.
That's true.
That's a super type. So Godot the Forge Master next turn is actually going to be capable of searching anything up, regardless of whether Joe has more artifacts to deploy or not.
For Davis, he's in a little bit of trouble now because it could be a Wormcoil Engine on the horizon or something even more devastating. And he does not have a Gem Palm Incinerator. Furthermore, if he were to draw a 10 Street Hooligan, he couldn't enhance it because he does not have green mana due to the Blood Moon. So, the Echo on the Maug War Marshal, will he pay it?
I think it looks like paying it's probably fine. He can Alpha Strike here, obviously, and his Pyrokinesis can finish the job on the Forge Master should it block anything, which it's got to be pretty tempting to block, right? It's just a bunch of 1/1s. What can they do?
could fall into Davis's trap. We'll see. I mean, the other issue too, or at least sort of an issue, is that if he does let everything through, the ringleader could find an answer to the Forge Master,
such as Incinerator.
Yep.
Of course, and like Goblin Matron, a second copy of Goblin Matron, if Jim has one, would be equally threatening with the Aether Vial. But Joe doesn't really know what's going to happen until he lets it go.
Well, he is going to let it all through. So you've got a Lackey trigger, which means you've got a ringleader trigger, top 4. How about a little more?
Yeah, I like the choice to let it go, but obviously Joe's about to get bit.
Yep, backfire there. Gem Palm Incinerator, Goblin Matron, and a Goblin Pile Driver.
So the full blowns. He gets an Incinerator.
Yeah.
He can go ahead and cycle that right now and kill Coda with the Forge Master. And he also has a Goblin Matron that he can violin in the end step.
Yeah, it's a pretty good ringleader. That's because Goblin Ringleader is a pretty good card.
I mean, it's an uncommon. How good could it really be?
Incinerator's going to cycle. Arid Mace will be the draw off of that, but more importantly, Forge Master is going to bite the dust there from Marucci, as Davis is going to pass the turn back in a very, very comfortable position. Marucci's going to draw his card, and not sure he can get out of this.
His hand is Land, Mirror, Battlesphere, and whatever he just drew. Lotus Petal. Well, that's it.
Yep. That is it. So Jim Davis is going to win. He's going to move on to 7-1 in this 9-round Legacy Open here in Philadelphia. Joe Marucci, a tough matchup for the Mud deck, as you guys just saw at home.
I dog on Goblins a fair bit, and it is so easy, and that's why. But it looked pretty impressive there. This is you said it was a good matchup, and I agree. It looked like a knife through butter.
Yeah. yeah. Sometimes it slices, it dices, it can do a few things. But Mud is a deck that, if that was a super popular deck, Goblin's a deck that I think you would go towards to try to beat it. Just because just every axis that they're trying to operate on, Goblins can interact with favorably, as you saw in those 2 games there. So it's a favorable pairing this deep in the tournament for Davis, which because of that win, he might be able to actually draw into the top.
Yeah, he might.
So